Welcome everyone to the first in our spring 2019 series of webinars, and we are really excited that you are joining us today. My name is Margot Frank, and I'm a member of the National Leadership Team for Elders Climate Action. And today is the first in our series of 3 webinars. We'll have 2 more in May, one on the 16th and one on the 30th, and we hope you'll join us for those. For those of you who are on the call today, we will be recording the speaker's presentation, and we will be sending that link to you tomorrow in an email. So you can then, once you get the recording, share it with other people, and that will encourage them maybe to want to join the next 2 webinars as well. I'm going to turn things over now briefly to Jen Chandler, our Director of Operations, and she'll explain the nuts and bolts of how this webinar works on your computer.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. For tonight's call, you will be seeing the speaker, and you'll be seeing the speaker's slides. If you have any questions, you can hover over the Zoom window that you're seeing us in and hit the Q&A box and insert any questions that you have for the speaker in the Q&A box. If you're having any technical issues, you can hit the chat box and you can send a message to me. My name is Jen, and I can assist you with any technical questions you might have. So please use the question and answer box if you have questions, and feel free to submit those questions at any time throughout the webinar for Crystal. I hope you enjoy the webinar tonight.
Thanks, Jen. Today's webinar topic we're really excited about. We're focusing on Project Drawdown, which has been described as the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming. It's not a newly devised plan, but already exists and is being implemented around the world. Today's presenter, Chissell, is Vice President of Operations and Engagement at Project Drawdown. Chissell has an interdisciplinary background in law, environmental science, and business management, and has held leadership roles in and advised a range of organizations, including small businesses, the City of Baltimore, the Maryland Environmental Service, and the town of Highland Beach, Maryland. She's worked at the University of San Francisco and at Bay Area arts organizations. Chissell holds a JD from the University of Maryland Law School and an MS in Environmental Science from Johns Hopkins University, plus an MBA from the University of San Francisco and a BA in Journalism from Howard University. Welcome, Chissell.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction, Margot, and it's lovely to be here with everyone virtually. So I'll go ahead and get started, and excited to tell you more about Project Drawdown. I have some slides to share with you. Are you seeing my slides okay? Great. So what is drawdown? Drawdown is the point when concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere begin to decline year to year. Now, Project Drawdown was founded with 3 aims in mind. And we were founded in the Bay Area in California to focus on 3 objectives. So, get my slides to change. Okay. So the first is to name the goal, to make drawdown a key goal for humanity and a focus for worldwide climate action. So rather than just slowing the rise of greenhouse gases, we propose an ambitious goal to stop and eventually reverse the rise of greenhouse gas concentrations. The second objective is to change the worldwide conversation about climate. So we want to reframe the communication about global warming from a message of threat and fear to a message of possibility and opportunity. So we have scientists around the world who are doing a superb job of describing the problem and also regularly updating us about the severity of the problem. But let's give equal opportunity to information about solutions and the progress that's being made in the world on implementing solutions. This sort of conversation can help us feel less overwhelmed, and it can encourage us and motivate us to action. So in changing and reframing the conversation, we also want to communicate in positive ways. So at Project Drawdown, we avoid violent and military language, such as fight climate change, battle, war, combat. Now is the time for us to work in harmony with each other and with the earth and with the earth's natural systems. So if we're going to have a rallying cry, let's have one that's framed in terms of possibility, harmony, regeneration, opportunity, and creativity. The third objective for Project Drawdown was to determine, is it actually possible to achieve drawdown? And so Project Drawdown did the first apples to apples comparison of solutions that are already existing that humanity already has in time. So to accomplish this analysis of whether it's possible to reach drawdown, we brought together a global team of experts. Our first round of research included 65 researchers. Many of their photos you'll see on the slide right now. They're from 22 countries on 6 continents. And that was our initial phase of research. We have a current cohort of an additional 12 researchers, and we continue to bring on other researchers every year. Now, the analysis that our research did was it focused on technologies and practices that both avoid sending greenhouse gases up into the atmosphere and those that bring carbon back to Earth. Now, the result of this initial phase of research was this book, Drawdown. It's a catalog of existing and proven solutions, 80 of them, plus 20 what we call coming attractions, which are solutions that are not yet proven, that are still nascent, but there are 80 solutions that we were able to analyze that reflect what the world is already doing to reverse global warming. So this is a global analysis of what's possible over a 30-year period if solutions are increased. So Project Drawdown looked at what we as a human family will do. So it's not just US focused or only focused on Europe, but rather on the entire world. Now, to qualify for inclusion in this analysis, we looked at solutions that are already currently available and already solutions that are financially viable, that have a proven potential to reduce greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, either through avoiding emissions or through sequestering carbon in the earth. For the solutions that were included, any negative consequences of the solution had to be outweighed by the positive benefits of the solution. And sufficient data had to be available to model the technology or practice at a global scale. So now most of the solutions included, except maybe 2 or 3, are what we call no regret solutions. They have many co-benefits, and they are technologies and practices that we should implement even if there was no problem with global warming, because they have so many other benefits for humanity. So the Elders Climate Action has a great website about what people can do to help with reversing global warming. So I'm going to focus more on ways to think about solutions as opposed to what specifically people can do. There'll be some overlap, of course, but I really want to focus on the way of thinking that this drawdown framework proposes. Now, this is an example of a solution that everyone's heard about. Pictured on this slide is a Euros woman who lives on a floating island in Lake Titicaca. And the island is made of straw, as is her house. And so this solar grid, this solar panel, will allow her to stop using kerosene in her straw house and be able to provide lighting for her children to study by and for all her other needs without kerosene. So there are 1 billion people in the world who don't have access to the electric grid. So when we in the US, for example, think about solar panels, we're usually thinking about replacing our current source of electricity. But for many people in the world, they will be able to have access to electricity without new sources of emissions. So this is an important co-benefit of solar, rooftop solar, and it's one of the no regret solutions because it provides so many benefits to so many people in the world. Now, I also want to point out how solutions are presented in the book Drawdown and at drawdown.org. We have ranked each solution in terms of its gigatons of potential to reduce CO2 equivalents over a 30-year period. We show the number of gigatons of CO2 equivalent reduced. We show the net cost of the solution, which reflects how much more or less is needed to implement the solution compared to business as usual. So where the solution would cost less to implement, you would see a negative number as opposed to a positive number in that spot. And also we show the net operational savings, which is the net savings to operate the solution over 30 years compared to business as usual. So in some case, there are some solutions where it would cost more to operate the solution than the conventional practice. In that case, you would see a negative number under the savings. Electric bikes is one of the solutions included. This is interesting in the global perspective because it's not, I don't think it's commonly known that electric bikes are the most common and the fastest selling alternative fuel vehicle. There were 31 million of them sold in 2012, and 95% of electric bikes were sold in China. Telepresence is what we're all doing now. We've all saved a bunch of emissions by logging on to this webinar rather than getting in our cars to join each other. Low flow fixtures, something that could be implemented in households. Indigenous peoples' land management. So now this is a solution that we may have thought of as a human rights issue, but not a climate solution. But actually it is an important climate solution. Indigenous people around the world use a variety of practices that reduce emissions and increase sequestration of carbon. And also indigenous communities have contributed to reducing emissions through their organized resistance to mineral, oil, and gas extraction on their land, and by resisting the expansion of monocrop plantations. Now, the research shows that the best outcomes for carbon drawdown happen when indigenous people have legal control over their land. So granting title in name only to indigenous communities is really not enough. The research shows that it's important that indigenous communities have actual legal control over the land that they're managing, and this is best for carbon drawdown. So accordingly, Project Drawdown's analysis of this solution looks at the benefits from increasing the forest lands over which indigenous peoples and local communities have tenure security, which means legal control over the lands that they owned prior to colonization, and with the rights that accompany this legal control. Now, this clean cook stove is another example of how improving human life also contributes to drawdown. So there are 40% of humans use wood, charcoal, animal dung, crop residues, and coal as cooking fuel. Improved cook stove technologies can reduce the harvesting of fuel that contributes to deforestation, so cutting down trees for fuel to use in cook stoves. And clean cook stoves have health benefits. They can reduce the amount of carbon dioxide, methane, carbon monoxide, and black carbon that are emitted to the atmosphere, and also inhaled by those who use them or who are nearby when they're being used, mainly women and children. So almost 16 gigatons of carbon can be, emissions can be avoided by the use of clean cook stoves while also improving human life. So I think that it's important that even where there are solutions that we may not implement ourselves, when we have the information about the full range of solutions, we can think more broadly about what actions we ourselves will take. So it's not, we don't have options only for what we do in our own households, but also how we help people in other parts of the world. Now, part of Project Drawdown's analysis was to rank the solutions based on their potential to contribute to drawdown. And this slide shows the top 20. This is where we see the big numbers of gigatons of reduced CO2 equivalents. And so using an analysis like this allowed for some insights and some surprises. So moving toward 100% renewable energy is essential to reaching drawdown. And that's usually where most of our attention goes when we think about solutions. However, we found that electricity generation solutions were only 5 among the top 10 most impactful potential solutions. By comparison, we found that 8 of the top 20 relate to how we produce food, the type of food we consume, and how much food we waste. So the food sector is quite impactful and important to think about when we think about global action to move toward drawdown. Reduced food waste is ranked number 3. This refers to food waste both before and after it reaches the consumer. Reducing food waste reduces the amount of methane that's released to the atmosphere. And it also reduces the resources that are used to produce food and get it to market. Reducing food waste and using our food more efficiently, feeding more people with fewer resources can help to avoid clearing forests to grow additional food that is then wasted. Plant-rich diet, ranked number 4, is also very impactful. So this refers to reducing the demand for livestock in countries where people consume more animal protein than they need. So we're referring not to everyone in the world going on a vegan diet, but really for those who are consuming more meat than they need or animal protein to look toward reducing it, the amount they're consuming, while also allowing for those who are undernourished to be sufficiently nourished. SILVOPASTURE is also a very impactful solution, but it's not familiar to most, and it's not widely used currently in the world, but it could have a huge impact if it were practiced more widely. SILVOPASTURE refers to integrating trees into pastures. And the research shows that pastures with trees sequester 5 to 10 times more carbon than pastures without. The benefits are that animal health goes up, livestock produce more meat, more milk, and more offspring, and land managers are able to also grow additional products, such as fruit and nuts, on the same pasture land. Grazing of livestock is the world's largest land use. If only 2% of global grassland were devoted to SILVOPASTURE, it could remove and store roughly 31 billion tons of carbon dioxide between 2020 and 2050. The same impact that Project Drawdown projects for both rooftop solar and commercial LED lighting combined. And this solution is most widely used in Central America and South America. Now, although Project Drawdown did rank the solutions in terms of their potential to reduce emissions and sequester carbon, it's important to remember that Project Drawdown took a systems approach and looked at an entire system of solutions, and that all of them are important. There are no small solutions. So we can't just focus on the top 20. We have to work to scale all of them. Now, how is this information that Project Drawdown produced being used? We're seeing it being used in a variety of ways. One example is local governments and communities. So the city of Cincinnati, when they updated their climate action plan for 2018, they modeled it after Drawdown by focusing on a range of solutions, by measuring their impact, and by including the entire community in suggesting solutions to include in their plan. Other communities are also organizing to bring information about Drawdown to their local elected officials. And we're seeing community meetings, book clubs, and other events to spread the word and educate the community about solutions, including organizations that are incorporating this information into the presentations that they give to the public about global warming. We're also seeing educators at every level, from elementary through university, teaching their students about Drawdown and incorporating this information into their coursework and curriculum. And it's being used in a wide range of subjects, everything from sustainability to theater, public speaking, the sciences, a full range of topics where this information can be relevant. We're also seeing Drawdown being incorporated into many engagement tools to educate people about solutions and to help change this focus toward a solutions focus. A premier example is the Drawdown Eco Challenge that just completed its second annual challenge last month. But our partners, the Northwest Earth Institute, who run the Drawdown Eco Challenge, plan to make it into a year-round challenge that people can use as a tool to engage, and they'll be launching that later this year. So we are really looking forward to seeing more ways that people will use their own knowledge of their communities and use their creativity to decide on the ways that they'll use this information to work toward drawdown. Now, we hope that you will want to learn more, and the book Drawdown is a great place to start, but we actually have quite a bit more information available at drawdown.org. There you will find technical summaries about each of the 80 solutions, including the methodology that was used to analyze the solutions. You'll see research references, as well as references for the book Drawdown. And you'll find another important and interesting resource, which is the sector summaries, which talk about the impact and the methodology for each of the sectors that was analyzed in Drawdown, such as the food sector, electricity generation, transportation, buildings and cities, and all of the sectors that were included in this analysis, so that you can see how the information gathered in the modeling was integrated into a full system, look at a full system of solutions. We hope that you'll follow us on social media and also sign up for our newsletter to get updates. We post regularly on Facebook and Twitter about solutions work that's happening worldwide. So now, what's next for Project Drawdown? We'll be continuing our research into solutions. So we'll be updating and expanding our analysis. We had a cohort of research fellows who have just completed updating the information about the solutions we've already featured. We'll be identifying and analyzing new solutions. We have research underway right now to analyze a new sector of solutions, the oceans sector. We're going to begin research on local and regional evaluation of drawdown solutions. Many people ask, is there information for how this will impact my state or my city? And how will I know what are the most important solutions and most impactful for my specific geographic region? So we'll begin that analysis. We're forming partnerships with other research institutions and local alliances of interested organizations. For example, Penn State University is partnering with Project Drawdown on a scientific research conference for international experts, and that will be held in September of 2019. This conference will provide a forum for advancing the science of solutions and will serve as the launchpad for a global drawdown research collaborative. We're working with some key partners to develop methods for educating investors with a goal toward shifting $1 trillion toward infrastructure, economic activity, and investment in viable climate solutions in the coming years. And we'll continue to work to help communities and businesses and policymakers implement climate solutions in the real world. So that is my overview of Project Drawdown's work. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Crystal. That was wonderful. We have quite a few questions, and it was really informative, and it was great that you were able to frame it into what is not just good for the global warming, but also good for humanity. So I'm going to start with some questions for you. Does the current information on the Drawdown website incorporate the latest IPCC report from 2018 with the requirement of the global temperature not to exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius over the pre-industrial times? Drawdown book seems to focus on temperature goals by 2050.
Mm-hmm. That's right, it does. So at the time that we did this this initial research, that report had not yet been issued. So of course, you know, we're looking at a more urgent timeline than we were when this Project Drawdown started in 2014. So our current researchers are looking at framing their analysis in terms of what will accelerate reaching drawdown. So we're actually at work now to look at an analysis that incorporates that more urgent timeline.
Thank you. Somebody wants to know what are clean cook stoves and what is the alternative fuel for the clean cook stoves?
So there's a variety of different ones. I would recommend like some internet research to look at that, but it's cook stoves that capture more of the carbon that is emitted by the stove, and they use fuels that are alternative fuels. Some use pellets that are slower burning, and they avoid fuel from cutting down trees and avoid coal and other fuels that are less healthy.
Thank you. You've mentioned a little bit about collaborations, but do you collaborate with other action groups? This is from somebody who attended a Sunrise Movement meeting, and he finds their approach quite effective.
Mm-hmm. So we've taken a position that we will maintain our status as an independent research organization. So we are not currently taking positions on certain initiatives or advocating as an organization. However, we are open to working with any organizations that would find use of our information useful. We haven't yet partnered with Sunrise Movement, but I will say that members of the staff are very excited about what they're doing. So we're certainly open to partnering them in some way.
Thank you. I don't know if you've experienced this, but how does Drawdown deal with resistance from fossil fuel corporations? And this person is particularly dismayed by the executives' willingness to damage our climate, irrespective of the harm done.
Mm-hmm. So I can't say that we've heard about resistance from fossil fuel companies. What we've done is an objective analysis, looking at the science and the research and the data. So it's hard to argue with data and with independent analysis. So we're not, because we're not an advocacy organization, we haven't directly experienced any pushback from any fossil fuel companies, but our aim is more to present an objective view of the information that is existing about existing solutions, and that information is undeniable.
Thank you. Somebody would like to know how you're funded?
We are funded primarily through family foundations, but also individual donations. We don't receive any government funding.
Is the conference that's going to be held at Penn State open to the public?
It's open to the public, but it's targeted at researchers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure yet. I think they may have already or will soon post information about registration for it and other information about the conference. But it's not really targeted at the general public. It's primarily targeted at researchers who are working in the field of solutions. Because what they'll do at the conference is discuss the best analysis for solutions, discuss integration of this look at analysis of solutions across sectors, and other focus on the science. So I'm not sure if it will be open to the general public.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Some people participated in the Drawdown Challenge and found it fun and educational and uplifting, seeing how many people were engaged. Do you have information on your last challenge, you know, how many people engaged in it and how many teams you had, etc.?
Yeah, I believe there were close to 14,000 participants, which is actually double the number who participated in the first year, and around 1,000 teams participated. But we're still waiting to get the actual final numbers on the participation. So it seems to be a very popular way to engage with the material, and allows people to take a broader look at how they can impact emissions and work toward drawdown. There's such a range. And I also, one feature of it that I really think is important is learning about solutions. So even if they are things that you yourself as an individual cannot impact, or that may not be relevant to your community, it's so important that we have the information, that we be informed about what's available, so that we're it's less possible that we'll be bamboozled if we're told that there's nothing that can be done, or that certain solutions can't be implemented. If we have information, we know what to advocate for. We know what to support around the world. So even beyond just what I can do in my individual capacity, having the full information gives a much broader view of the worldwide picture on reversing global warming.
Absolutely, and I think your example of the rooftop solar, where the difference between the way we perceive rooftop solar here and as an adjunct or alternative to the grid, whereas in other countries that don't have a grid, the rooftop solar is in fact their energy source without the necessity of the installation of any infrastructure or any grid. So, you know, it's important that people look at it from each perspective to see the impacts, because we here have it very differently.
Mm-hmm.
Have you looked at market-based methods for reducing dependency on fossil fuels, like a carbon tax?
We have not. So our initial research focused strictly on solutions, and we consider a carbon tax to be an accelerator of solutions. Carbon tax, other policies that would help accelerate adoption of solutions, we did not include in our initial analysis. We focused strictly on the actual technologies and practices.
Thank you. Which global climate models did Drawdown use in its initial analyses?
Oh, many. So I would suggest for the answer to that question to take a look at drawdown.org. You'll find all of that information, which data sets were used for each solution. You'll find technical summaries there that can give that information for each of the solution. So, but we looked, of course, broadly at the range of models that are out there.
Okay, many ECA folks are in towns and cities and ask the question, what are the solutions most useful for us to get started locally as advocates? Elders as retirees have bandwidth to serve as key early local advocates, especially in red districts. Mm-hmm. When can we expect the local research you mentioned, and can Project Drawdown please rush out a preliminary version, say a one-page list? A quick cheat sheet somebody wants.
Yeah, so a full analysis like that for every local town and city would be really a lengthy undertaking. So we'll probably start with some key regions, but please don't wait for us. So we actually are looking at, what sort of guidelines we could release for local communities, towns and cities, some sort of guidelines for an approach. So that is something that we hope to produce in the coming year. But in the meantime, we really think that people in the local communities and their local elected officials and experts on solutions in those areas are the true experts on those local regions. And so we don't presume to be the experts on every area of the world and every area of the US. That's, a sort of an arrogance that we don't claim. So I think that, and as I said earlier, I think that educating ourselves, and especially ECA members who might have more time to research what solutions are appropriate for their local areas, and people who are already knowledgeable in some way can come together and research these questions themselves. And also, please don't overlook collaboration, forming collaborations in your local area. Any areas that have universities, have associations or experts in certain solution areas, in land use, in green buildings, or any of the sectors, can come together and look at these questions themselves. So while we did that globally, we certainly don't think that we're the only ones who can do this analysis. We're hoping that this sort of analysis will spread. That's part of our mission, is that this sort of work will be taken up worldwide. So I would say to look at how you can form collaborations in your own areas among people who are already knowledgeable and who are willing to come together to use your know-how and creativity to address these questions.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do, please contact me and let me know, because we are wanting to track all these sorts of efforts that are happening around the world.
Thank you. One of our chapters actually focuses on food waste and composting. That's been their, they've targeted that as the most important thing that they can do in their community. And there's other areas where there's a ton of food waste in school cafeterias, where kids buy lunches and throw out 50% of that. And some schools have been able to, under some pressure, set up what's called share tables. And the kids who don't want their milk or don't want their fruit put it on this share table, and then another child who may actually need more food can get it. And it just sort of cycles it to where it's necessary and prevents the food waste. And it's taking off, but it's sort of school by school, but it's something elders could do in their own school, talking to their own schools, their own parent-teacher organizations or principals, etc. That can have a really big impact.
Yes, and it's quite brilliant, because as we're seeing, the younger people are very engaged with this issue, and they are not wanting to waste time, and they're wanting to take action. And if they can connect, this issue with global warming, it can only, add power to what they're already concerned about and what they're already saying that they want to do. So, as I've observed some of the student protests and demonstrations, I'm really hoping that they won't get stuck in just re-articulating the problem, and also will discuss solutions and focus on solutions, so that they won't be stuck, they won't be in the position of the previous generations. And I also think that there's often in this at least what's reported by the media, there's a lot of focus on stating the problem and the despair of what's happening and the overwhelming size of the problem. And I think that if we can focus everyone's minds also on the existing solutions, knowing that there's already, we have the technology, we have the practices, we know what to do, that's not the problem. So if we can get minds and hearts and hands focused on solutions and implementing them, I think it will, it can change everything, and especially for the younger generations. We don't want them to get discouraged.
Great, thank you. I have another question here. What's the U.S. status of the #1 heavy hitter, refrigeration? The U.S. has declined to endorse the Kigali Amendment, but are states going around the federal blockers?
I'm not, I won't say that I'm fully up to date with that. National Geographic just did an article about the state of refrigeration. They cited Drawdown, so I would say to take a look at that article. You can find it on drawdown.org. And but I do think that there's more action, more progress happening in Europe than there is in the U.S. But hopefully that can change. It's an example of one of the, you know, once we have that information, then that's something more that we can advocate for, that we might not have known was such a priority before in our advocacy. Mm-hmm. But thanks to this analysis, we can see where we should direct our advocacy.
Okay, over the last few years, climate change, global temperature, greenhouse gas radiant forcing has been accelerating. What is known about these worrisome changes, and are these changes factored into the drawdown evaluations?
So now our research and analysis did not focus on the state of the climate. We focused mainly on the state of solutions. However, we are bringing more of that sort of information into our analysis of solutions and our analysis of the impact of solutions. So I can't give you know, specifics of that right now. That's better addressed to our research team. But yes, we are beginning to factor more of the climate variables into our analysis of solutions. That's a key element of our the updated analysis that we're currently engaged in, that should be released later this year, toward the end of the year.
Great, thank you. Does Drawdown interact with Lord Stern and his team at the London School of Economics?
Not yet. Someone want to make an introduction?
And then do you interact with the Sierra Club's national campaign Ready for 100?
We have not to date, no.
Okay. Couple of more questions. I don't see energy and other types of efficiency as a solution, yet I recently heard a researcher at Stanford showed data that efficiency may actually be #1 on the Pareto. Did I miss something, or was that intentional, and what was the logic?
There are quite a few solutions that are focused on energy efficiency. So I would say take a look at drawdown.org, where you can see the full list of solutions. Many of them deal with efficiency.
Great. What agreement were you referring to relative to refrigeration?
I think that the previous question was referring to the Kigali agreement.
Great, yeah, I think that's what they were talking about. Would you be able to share your contact information?
Yeah, so the best way to contact us is at drawdown.org. There is a a contact box where it's like an online form that you could fill out. And though that will seem impersonal, it's really not. I actually read everything that comes through there. But if you contact us that way, it allows us to capture data about who's contacting us and about what, and to use that information in a way that informs our work. So that is really the best way to contact us. So drawdown.org, if you scroll to the bottom of the page, there's a contact link, which will take you to this online form.
Great, thank you. Question, what is the Kigali Agreement?
Oh, that is an international agreement governing the gases that are used in refrigerants. An international agreement with the intent of phasing out the most harmful gases.
Great, thank you. I think we've pretty much answered. Let me see if there's one more. I think we've got all the questions answered. This has been really, really wonderful. I really appreciate your time and all of the information. And hopefully we will have some people participating further in drawdown activities in their own communities, and just kind of looking around and seeing, you know, you may spark an interest at seeing where people can find something that is relevant to their own community. So that is that's going to be very helpful for people as we move forward. And we really, as I said, we really appreciate your time in being able to be with us tonight. And I want to remind everybody that our next webinar is going to be on May 16th, and I will tell you exactly what that's going to be. Maybe I won't. Having a little trouble pulling it up. Our next webinar is May 16th at the same time, and we will have Robbie Orvis, who's the co-author of Designing Climate Solutions, a policy guide for low carbon energy. And then on May 30th, the same time, we have a youth action panel discussion with representation from 0 Hour, the Climate Reporter, Sunrise Movement, I Matter, and our Children's Trust. That looks to be like a really exciting panel discussion to hear from all of the youth organizations and their perspectives and what they're doing and what they plan to do and how they could work with elders. So again, thank you so much, Crystal. And we hopefully will be in contact further. We'll have our members engage a little further in drawdown. And if you enjoyed this webinar, I hope you'll register for the next 2 webinars. And if you really enjoyed it, I hope you will consider providing us with a small donation so we can continue doing these kinds of things and informing and inspiring everybody and making this an engagement that we can continue into the future. We hope to have webinars in the fall again. If you don't know how to provide a donation, you go to our webpage, eldersclimateaction.org, and just hit the donate button at the top. And so just as a reminder, the next webinar is on the 16th, 2 weeks from now, and I hope to see you all then, and have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you.